Perfect. Amazing. So are you, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate, I guess, just explanation, watching all of the videos and promotional stuff that has been coming out through Dungeons & Dragons, through their official YouTube page. So today we have...
Hey, where do you shower?
Huh?
Where do you shower?
In the bathroom?
Oh.
Yeah.
Mom didn't say we had to use like theirs or...
No. Just keep it clean.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Anyways, so we're going to be looking at 4 different videos today. We're going to be going over first with Laren on capturing the essence of D&D and putting it into Baldur's Gate. Then we're going to go over how to use Baldur's Gate 3 to enhance your D&D home game. Then we're going to do Laren's guide to the character creation inside of Baldur's Gate, and then also all of the classes in Baldur's Gate. And according to the D&D community, Laren is one of the best people in the Dungeons & Dragons, I guess, workplace. I've heard a lot about wanting her to take over the company because she has a lot of great ideas and art and just everything like that. So I don't know if I've personally met her in videos, but we're gonna see today. So without further ado, let's get right into it.
One of the most alarming things to me about Baldur's Gate 3, and for a lot of D&D players this is going to come up, is how completely accurate it is to 5th edition. It's almost one-to-one in terms of your action economy, how you handle combat, how you handle spells, the character creation, you know, the different stats that you use, the different subclasses. It's all so specific to D&D. Why was there such an obsession with detail for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons? Like, why is it so accurate?
It has been a huge challenge for us to hit that level of parity between...
It's Laren Studios. It's not a person. I'm thinking of somebody else then. I don't know who I'm thinking of.
Tabletop version and our own version. It took us little years to get there, but it was something that we wanted to do from the very start. One of the big reasons is that D&D is immensely popular, especially now. It's getting more and more popular every year, and we wanted players that are going to come in to feel comfortable and to also feel like they already know what the spells are about, they already know what the classes are about, they already know things about action economy. Maybe they have a friend who's playing D&D, or maybe they played D&D once in one-shot campaign. There's so many people, I think, that have tried D&D, have seen D&D, have watched somebody play D&D. Maybe you're not playing D&D yourself, but maybe you're watching Critical Role, and then you already know all the classes.
Yep. Critical Role is one of the most popular streaming and YouTube groups that watch or that play Dungeons & Dragons. The second one is Dimension 20, which is like a subscription TV series.
All the spells, you probably know some cool combos as well. We wanted to tap into that huge pool of knowledge, and for that we realized very early that we have to go into a lot of detail. So to give you an example of the kind of detail I'm talking about, when we were working on Paladin on one of our later patches, there is a very popular kind of quirk in the rules that allows Paladin to only add a lot of damage when they crit. And the feature that they use, I think Divine Smite, is worded in a very specific way that allows for that little quirk, and the community has built their entire builds around that specific interaction. And so we had to make sure that we read up on what community expects from us, and then specifically emulate that specific behavior in our game. In fact, we added a special button that whose job is just to make sure that when you crit, it's gigantic crit of radiant damage that your paladin is going to put in, because we know that players are going to be looking for that.
You play D&D yourself. What's interesting is I could easily recommend this game to someone who is, like you mentioned, curious.
I could easily recommend this game to anyone who wants to play Dungeons & Dragons and buy only a one-time purchase, that you don't have to feel like you're going to be buying all of the source books, spell books, creatures, classes, all of that stuff. I highly recommend this game because, yes, it's only one story because obviously it's coded and there's not much that you can change about it. But if you're trying to make a character and let's say you have the player's handbook, but something that you want is in Tasha's book of everything, that you don't know if you want to buy the whole book or just that character, you're able to play this game, even if it's the same story, test out that character, and then be like, okay, I do want this purchased in D&D Beyond so that I can easily put it into the game. Or you can just, write down everything or look it up in PDFs or pirated things. Now, I'm not saying pirating is okay, but obviously there are better options if you are in a financial issue where you cannot buy the $20 to $30 books, even $60 books that Dungeons & Dragons has on their market.
It's about D&D, but they've never played it. Maybe they saw the D&D movie, maybe they watched a variety of live play shows. But I feel like
I will say the D&D movie obviously made Dungeons & Dragons very popular. It was high-level characters, though. I mean, those characters were pretty high-leveled. I don't exactly know how high. I know that the enemy was at least 20th level because she had a 9th level spell, which was Finger of Death, and yeah. But that movie was good, but I think you do have to be careful because Dungeons & Dragons is a very expensive hobby. Obviously, it's not as expensive as other things, but it can get expensive if you're not careful.
someone could learn D&D by playing Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could be, I hope, it could be a pretty smooth experience, actually. We put a lot of effort into introducing D&D content and ideas, concepts.
I mean, you guys...
in a very...
I mean, from just the trailers and gameplay that I've seen, first of all, I thought it was going to be very confusing, but after watching all these videos, which, great advertising, by the way, I'm very excited to try it out with friends and just myself and see how it goes.
Very step-by-step manner. If you've been following what we've been showing so far about the release, you probably know that we've redone character creation just to make it very much step-by-step, walk you through what are the core concepts, what are the core choices you have about your character, and also what things matter. There are spells, there are cantrips, what's a cantrip, things like that. It goes through how we structured the tutorial level into how we've rewrote again all of the tooltips in the game. I think the kind of tooltips, the little text describing what a spell does for the early level spells were rewritten upwards of 6-7 times, re-edited.
Why? Okay, like, obviously you want to make it be able to understand, but why don't you just make it like what it is in the D&D content? Like, I'm very confused between these two companies. Like, are they actually working together to make a Dungeons & Dragons game, or is Laren Studios just trying... Well, obviously they'd be working together, otherwise Laren Studios would get a lawsuit. I don't understand the legalities of what they're doing, because why don't they just make the content exactly like what it is in Dungeons & Dragons? I mean, obviously you'd want to make it better, because there are some things in Dungeons & Dragons that are pretty shit, but I feel like you could just do a one-to-one copy of it.
New ideas of how we can specify, how we can keep some of the flavor, but also remain very to the point, how we need to highlight terms and let you kind of mouse over them and get like a little Wikipedia little entry about what this term means.
That's the level of like that surprised me. Like, okay, you're talking about things like advantage. You are having bonus actions, all of that stuff. It's just kind of delightful to see like that level of similarity. I don't know if I've seen a tabletop game get kind of like mimicked so accurately. It's interesting. What for you did you feel was like the...
Well, yeah, you've never seen that so accurately represented, because if somebody made a copy, you would sue them. So I don't understand why you're like, oh, this has never been seen before. Yes, because anyone who wanted to make it is afraid of you guys suing
Quintessential
them.
D&D experience. Like, what was the most important thing to capture in terms of the feel
Like, I
of
don't-
this game?
That's a huge question. For us, the experience of the player is this kind of multifaceted thing. We know from talking to playtesters, from seeing how they play through the game, that each of their playthroughs is going to be completely unique. And to me, the quintessential part of it is going to be that little thing that only you and 0.01% of players will do or will see in this game. I was playtesting yesterday, and for the first time ever in 5 years, I realized that I can talk to certain characters. I've only ever treated them as enemies. I vaguely knew that there is some situation around them, but I've never had a conversation with them.
Talk to
That conversation was one of the best moments that I had in a while, just because it was so spontaneous. And in that moment, you feel like this whole game is built just for you. That's a feeling that I'm really chasing. That's why our character creation is so robust. That's why we try to put in as many choices and subclasses and races from the books as we could physically fit in the timetable. Because the moment you create your own character that is probably unique, like with relatively good chance that your character that you're going to create is probably going to be unique enough, and you're going to go through the game, it's probably going to be unique enough path. You will get that moment when you will realize, like, you know what, I probably just saw something that almost nobody ever saw or will see, so I should probably show it on YouTube or something.
Was there anything that was like a unique challenge?
So many.
I mean, if there's let's say 100 million people that play this game, you're gonna have a lot of people that are gonna see a lot of things. So, I mean, obviously, no one's gonna see it all at once, but I mean, even what we're doing now, like even what I'm doing now and what you're doing now, somebody's already done, I'm sure. I mean, we haven't watched this video 10 years ago, but somebody's doing it right now, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes. We thought at first that this is going to be a much more straightforward development cycle for system design, honestly. So the thinking went, here's a book, all of the design is pre-made for us, yay. So we probably don't have a lot to do. Maybe we're going to be consulting programmers, kind of like specifying which page the ruling is on, but that did not turn out to be remotely true. Turns out that the books are written for people, and people like to interpret things. The books are written in human language, and when you start to try to explain this to a machine, you need to do a lot of choices.
I see.
A lot of choices about little things here and there. Little choices.
Oh, I see. I think what he's talking about is the, like, guide your own adventure thing, right? Like, you have the baseline story, but you have to pick choices for the player to make. And in a D&D game where your imagination controls those choices, you can't really tell a computer that, because the computer can't think for itself and make up a random topic. Like, if you want to go in the forest, well, it's not coded, so you can't do that. So there was boundaries that they had to
Just
put.
about what's feasible and what's not feasible to even represent in a computer game. It
Yeah.
turns out that those 600 spells and actions that we were planning are gonna take a lot of work, each and every single one. And then this is a really cool thing about D&D. Every spell, every action has some twist to it. This is what I really love. You think like, oh.
So this is I feel like this is going to be a game like GTA, where this is going to be a great baseline. They shouldn't really need to add new games. They shouldn't need to make new games. All they need to do is make updates to their current game by adding spells, by adding, books. And like, the company can have downloadable content, like, oh, spells from this book are going to be $5 or something, So again, I don't know the legality of the two companies. I don't know if they're working together, but I just feel like they don't really need to make successors of the game. They just need to update the one they'll have. But we'll see how it goes.
Fucking grasp, that's going to be something very simple. It's going to be like a melee range. I'm going to grab somebody and deal some lightning damage. But hey, it also blocks reactions. And now we need to figure out how do we block reactions, how do we make sure that AI knows that their reactions
Lot
are
of
blocked
coding.
and kind of thinks, hey, I can block
Lot of coding.
reactions with my
I would
fast.
not be
How do
happy
we
about
tell
this.
this to UI? How do we give feedback to a player? Like,
It'd be sick as shit to work on this game, but it would not be fun to code
because
it.
they will be confused. Why did my reaction not trigger? What happened? All of these things suddenly cascade out of like a very simple twist in one of the earlier spells, and it gets worse and better from there as we go into higher and higher levels. So there was a lot of really interesting work, a lot of help from the community, pointing out what they expect from spells and features, pointing out how they usually play at the table. It was really great to just jump in a lot of D&D fan forums and look into like, hey, how do people use sneak attack? What kind of advantages do they look for to use it with? And that was especially also useful when we started working on equipment and loot, because we were looking for like, hey, what is there that we can offer to a class that isn't already covered by what the class has? What is interesting to a monk? Like, what kind of what kind of helmet is interesting for a monk to find? Things like that.
There are a lot of aspects that you can cover in a video game that you don't necessarily realize when you're playing tabletop Dungeons and Dragons. You have the opportunity to like give Eldritch Blast a really cool sound effect and a really cool visual look. Same thing with iconic spells like Fireball, Lightning Bolt, all kinds of different things. Do you have a series of spells that you just really enjoyed creating?
It's impressive to see my colleagues from animation and effects and code department and scripting department work on these spells. Some of my favorites are there's the Irresistible Dance spell that actually makes NPCs dance, and it was really cool to see like a bunch of people in the city just starting to dance, which sounds easy when you describe it, but then you realize just how much work it is to teach everything to dance, how much work it is to make sure that every creature that is susceptible to sleep spell is gonna drop down in a nice animation with like really fun SFX. How much thinking went into something like Silence Spell. So Silence Spell needs to muffle sounds. It's like real challenge actually for a lot of teams to make sure that this happens. D&D plays a lot with everything, really. Sound, visuals. It has very juicy spells. Good berry creates a nice juicy berry that you eat afterwards, right? Like there's so many summon spells that we had to work with, and then we had to go like, hey, we need something cool for the summon to do as well. And what about the summon?
How would you do team meetings would suck? Your list would be like 500 pages. How do you manage that? I mean, it's awesome that they did, but holy shit, that'd be so confusing.
Someone would probably need to climb ladders and be able to open doors and do all of the things that the kind of immersive side of our game allows you to do. So yeah, indeed, every single spell presented some challenge, and then when it comes together and you see like, oh hey, I can break a lot of situations with just knock spell.
I wonder what the hardest spell was.
But then the guards are gonna rush me because they hear knock in the distance. They treat it as a crime that somebody's casting something very loud outside. When this comes together in an immersive situation, it's really cool.
What was the favorite thing about the design process when it came to Baldur's Gate 3? What has you most excited for the launch?
I'm very excited to turn on as many streams and YouTube videos as I can as soon as the embargo lifts, and I want to see what people are going to come up with. The fun part about making a game like this, a very systems-driven, very big RPG, is that we probably don't know half of what's possible. Literally today, I saw somebody defeat like 40 rats with one spell in one turn in the most spectacular firework display I've seen in a while. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. What the
You do have to realize that once the game launches everywhere, your servers are probably going to crash, like Hogwarts Legacy. So hopefully they're ready for that.
What they're going to come up with? How are they going to combine Barrelmancy with spells, with magic items, with features, with all of the crazy things that you can get in situations? don't want to spoil much, but you're gonna go through some transformations as a player. Let's put it this way, if you want that.
Interesting.
I'm really excited to see what players are gonna come up with and how they're gonna break Baldur's Gate.
What is your advice for
Baldur's Gate. They're all gonna swarm the servers. That's how they're gonna
D&D
break
players who are looking to play Baldur's Gate 3, and what's your advice for Baldur's Gate 3 players who are looking to play D&D after they finish this game?
For a D&D player, I really advise to take their favorite character and to try to capture their essence in Baldur's Gate 3. It's a specific campaign and it has some homebrew rules, but you will find a lot of the things are very familiar. You will find a lot of things.
I hope they do make more.
But then you're gonna find a lot of new opportunities. As any campaign gives new opportunities, you're gonna see new magic items that might
the same
lead
story.
you to build your character differently. You're gonna find situations and entire areas where your character is gonna shine. So try to approach it as an invitation to kind of reinvent your character, to fall in love with them again, honestly. And then if you're gonna try to play some D&D after playing Baldur's Gate 3, well, I'm gonna advise you to try classes that might be intimidating in tabletop in Baldur's Gate 3, because
I will say that is a good point, because I think Wizard and Ranger. I think Wizard and Ranger are the most like classes that people don't like because they kind of suck. Warlock is also kind of bad. Other than that, I don't know what else everyone else. I don't know what people complain about really. I can't remember if Bard or Druid were good, but other than that, people really don't mind it.
In the game, the UI, I think, does a great job in introducing classes and concepts and resources and
I'll definitely be trying
terminology
every single class.
in a kind of really friendly way that moves you like step by step, explains a lot of things to you. We had playtesters who would tell us like, hey, I thought this class is not really for me, but after playing it in BG3, I figured out what I could be doing with it, and now I'm using it in my campaign. Just because when you're in the game, you see all of the things that are available to you. Like when I'm at the table, I constantly forget that I had a magic item or I had a feature that I got 2 levels ago. It's kind of hard to keep everything in your head. The game really helps you visualize them and kind of build up these little library of your own combos and moves that you can then show at the table.
Thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview.
Awesome.
I am so excited for the launch of this game. You have to be incredibly excited to see what happens on launch day.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and I hope everybody will have a great time at release. I really hope.
Okay, so we are going to be looking at how to use Baldur's Gate to enhance your D&D home game. Sorry, might be just the same as this
So along the
one.
lines of ways that Baldur...
Make sure that I have closed captions, number 1080.
Baldur's Gate 3 can become a tool for your tabletop game. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and it's not a direction that I originally thought I was going to go with it, but I just see so many ways to use this. It's really exciting. If you're familiar with X-Men, they have the Danger Room, right, where they can test out their powers and do training exercises against, supervillain level simulated threats. You can do that with Baldur's Gate 3 for your tabletop character. You can try a build, and then if it doesn't work, whereas in the game you'd have to rewind time, or everyone would have to be cool with, are we going to replay that session or just kind of pretend it's always been this other character, it's fine. But when you can respec your character and try different builds, try different subclasses, try different multi-class combinations.
That's really good. Because like my tiefling character from high school, we did a campaign and I just didn't act the way I wanted to. Then I did the college campaign and I did better, but it still wasn't, like, I wasn't able to fully, like, feel my character, and so this game will definitely help me with that. I think my next character, I've definitely learned a lot, and I'll be trying to do more roleplay, because I think that was what was happening with my last characters. I just didn't roleplay really. I didn't get into the feel of like, where's this character from? What is his actual goals? You know, so I think that was just the
Having
problem.
to worry about that story continuity, because Baldur's Gate's story continuity really is about the story that it presents to you as you go through it. And you can just jump right back into that immersion, even if you're playing a semi-completely new character, because you switched up in the camp. It doesn't have the same feel as if you try to do that in your role-playing game. Because I think we're pushed to keep that story coherent with a full through line. And so that's tricky to do at a game table. But on your computer,
Oh, this is
a couple
pain.
button clicks, right?
Mm.
You can actually sort of prototype a character that you want to play in a tabletop game by using Baldur's Gate to play through it, and then you can be like, oh, okay, this play style of this wizard really isn't working out for me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back, maybe mess with some multi-classing, right? Add in a couple levels of a different class and see if they blend.
Multi-classing is always nice.
Ooh, I tried this multi-class and it really did. I am not liking how it worked out, so I'm gonna go back and just do single class wizard and switch up the spells that I know and really play with that. Or oh, hey, try this different feat choice. Being able to play with that stuff without having to restart your game, or having to play through it in your actual weekly tabletop game that you're playing in, where depending on your group, maybe people are okay with takesy-backsies and do-overs, and oh, okay, well that didn't work, let's redo that. It's a little more difficult to pull off.
I mean, even environmentally, it reminds me of like what are cool environments for even myself. Of like, okay, I want to express this a little bit more, but like as a dungeon master, I can now describe things better because they also have added so much. Like we've had maps of nautiloids, we've had art of nautiloid ships and mind flayer ships, and all these other locations, but they have to get into extreme detail.
Oh yeah. And they have to animate it.
Yeah,
right?
and then animate it.
And sound design. And all of those
but
things.
Then you have that in your head as a player and a dungeon master now. Like, so even if you have a new player, they're having an easier time imagining this. If they have played Baldur's Gate 3, they're like, oh, I know exactly.
Exactly. It creates just this sort of multi-sensory touchstone for you to go ahead and...
I never said this in the last episode, but I want them to have, whether it's a DLC or just an extra area of, I guess, kind of what they were talking about, like the Marvel testing room, where it's just a coliseum where the monsters get higher and higher leveled and you get stronger and stronger, so that you can try out your characters and you don't have to follow the story. You just get to beat the shit out of different creatures and stuff.
And then if you both played it, then you both have that same experience. You can talk about the glisten on that weird fleshy door in the nautiloid, and they can think back to that and be like, oh, right.
Yeah, even the light puzzle solving of, okay, here's a giant piece of stone held up by a rope, and you need to get down here into this dungeon, knocking that down, causing it to break. But yeah, like when you're on the mind flayer ship, the nautiloid, after it's crashed, you can ignite some of the fuel, or whatever chemical it is, on fire and kill a bunch of enemies. And there's that kind of like, as dungeon masters, sometimes I forget to like add these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And this does a great job at showcasing the environment and how the environment can really be part of the encounter. In some cases, an integral part of the encounter.
It makes me sometimes wonder if I'm too soft on glass cannons in my D&D campaign. I was playing a wild magic sorcerer, and one of the things I love the most about that is the wild magic surges are happening on my behalf. Like it's just handling that math for me. And it's fun to see that randomly happen, but I just kept on throwing myself into the fray because that's my main character. I was like, I'm the main character. I'm going to run into combat and just getting destroyed.
Yeah. If you're a sorcerer, that might be a little rough.
Yeah.
My DM gave me main character syndrome. I died.
And so the enemy choices are a little smarter than, like, sometimes I'm just being very nice to my players and like I'm not going to have all the goblins attack the caster.
Well, that's one of the things with their sort of their different difficulty levels, where you can choose your sort of your experience. Is it going to be a little more story based, a little more approachable, or is it going to be no holds barred? This is for keeps. You better use your tactics to get through, and I think they call it the tactical difficulty mode.
Yeah,
And where
Nice.
they throw in all kinds of different components to a fight, like there are explosive barrels, there's environmental conditions. They might focus fire more,
Dude,
and
that's
that
gonna
as
be
a
awesome.
DM
I'm totally
could give
doing that.
you interesting ideas of the different levers you could pull in an encounter, both in setting up and designing it, and then
I want to play Baldur's Gate with my D&D boys. I want to see if people are available.
running it at the table.
Well, we can only have 4 players, which is kind of. I wish they had like 5 or 6 at least.
I can see myself even stealing a few of these NPCs that
Oh,
we run
yeah.
into in terms of their personality. Like, 'cause we're getting so much.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, it's fair, right?
Yeah.
They They used plenty of canonical D&D characters
Yeah.
in the video game.
yeah.
All's fair that we take these wonderful, vibrant characters they've created and use them as pieces as we see fit in our games.
Realize what they had said. Alright, well that was awesome. I mean, yeah, they pretty much just said like, use everything, you know? You'll need to add a portrait generator using the character creator. Well, I mean, you can just copy and paste it. Oh, actually, that's, yeah. Anyways. Alright, we're just gonna get to the next one. But yeah, they're talking about like portrait stuff and making 3D models of the characters and all that. Alright, so we're gonna go into the guide for the character creation, which I have not seen yet. I haven't seen any of these videos. This is my actual first time. And I'm very interested in the character creator because it looks good.
One of the most exciting aspects about Baldur's Gate 3 right now is character creation and the emotional attachment that you have to your character, and you are a big part of that. Tell me what you do.
Hold on. Hold on. Wait a minute.
I'm a lead character artist here at Laren. Me and my team work on everything starting from playable races to NPCs to creatures and armors. So kind of
Wow.
everything that you see on the screen that's like animating, talking, or making sure it's looking great. In terms of character creation, we kind of build up
Damn.
a tool set to populate the game because, as you
So
know,
cool.
the game is really big. You can actually meet more than like thousands of characters, like different NPCs, and we actually expect thousands of people to be able to customize their own
I still like
story,
the orc
their
with
own,
hair. That's so
adventure,
fucking
and their
funny.
own personal look. So we made a bunch of tools that help us do it. So you could kind of like create yourself from scratch. You can make your character look like you with our tools, or like kind of pursue the ultimate fantasy and
didn't even
try to
think about that.
customize your adventure to your liking.
Okay, so everyone's super hyped. The game is about to come out. What's your day one advice for making your character? You know, it's August 3rd, thousands, millions of characters getting generated all in one day. What is your day one advice for making your character?
So first and foremost, take your time. It's gonna take you a while.
Yeah.
Allow, well, at least an hour, you know, maybe.
An hour? That's my streaming time. What the fuck? You can't like save these character creations or
To
anything.
customize your character, to go through all of the options, to try a couple
Holy
of different races,
smokes.
try a couple of, different customization options.
What is the most exciting aspect of this launch for yourself?
I think the most exciting is indeed to see people create their own characters and kind of to get excited whenever they see an option that they really liked or they would prefer to have on the character. When we launch, like when we launched early access, I was like in every video stream on Twitch, like even with like minimum amount of people, I was like there trying to like get to know what people want, get to know what people use, it's really rewarding.
That is this company is doing the smartest thing I've ever seen, where they're doing the early access, and then they immediately go into YouTube and Twitch streams to see what people are doing, if there's any issues. Like, they're on top of what's happening.
To see kind of people tinkering with our things, but also actually playing the game and meeting characters in the world and then talking to them and then kind of reacting to what they see, like to the stories that they create. Yeah, that's really amazing. I'm very hyped. Can't wait.
That's the exciting thing is I think we're just going to see all of these different characters that were made in the game being shared online. And
The red
I'm
and
excited
green
for
are
everyone
kind of
gets to
really
see it.
dark.
I suspect that you will be lurking, right?
Yeah, I hope to see some interesting, picks that everyone would customize. Like we have, actually, we keep a statistics like of what the best, like the most popular player choice, and we're definitely gonna post like the most, the default of the default characters that people is gonna pick in our Twitter. But like looking at the statistics through.
Oh, shit. I don't even have them. Hold on. We're getting there. I'm assuming it's, well, I don't know if it's in their social media. Let's see. Nope, of course not. Okay. Let me see if I can find them on Twitter really quick. Sorry, X. Let me find them on X because whoops, I already spelled it wrong. ARINN. Laren Studios rerolled the 8th. Is that? I'm assuming this is it. So their X is LARIN Studios, and their whole thing is Laren Studios rerolled the D8. Cool. Collector's edition is $300. Woo! Alright.
Throughout early access, it's been very interesting because like throughout our patches, like player preferences actually changed.
Okay.
So the first most default character was like this white guy, very handsome, like very classic hairstyle, all of that. But when we released Bard patch, then like previously it was a human, obviously, but then with the Bard patch it was half elf, and then he kind of had a bit of a more fancier hairstyle, like this drow hairstyle. That's very very curious to see,
That is interesting. Like I can't wait to see the dad.
Oh, because everyone's trying to make Chris Pine or
All of
something.
that, actually, like as that progresses, as there are different options. What's the single most important thing that you found in your career in capturing when it comes to creating your own character?
The most important aspect of making a character and bringing the character to life is actually the eyes. You interact with people on day-to-day basis, and you can spot when something is off. And if the eyes don't have this like small glare in them, then the character that you look at kind of can seem dead. What we tried to make sure is that you always have this glow in the eye.
The like when the light hits the eye and it has
in all
that's
of the
smart.
lighting situations. We kind of had to fake it a little bit, but we could make sure that you like wherever
That's
whenever
really smart.
you look at somebody, there is this like glow a little bit, and then you instantly get attached. And then when you look at them,
I didn't
and
even
then
notice
they
that.
animates start talking to you, then like you kind of believe them, you believe in them, that they exist. This is definitely one of the hardest and like the main thing that we had to deal with. Well, there is a lot more, of course.
What's maybe something?
I mean, there are 3D eyes on other like modeling platforms like Sketchfab and stuff, but I don't know if they have such.
People don't know about the process or like your insights into like character creation or NPC creation. Is there anything like a weird story about like character creation that you have?
Well, I mean, with characters, it's like a lot needs to come together, and we actually work with a lot of departments, different departments that make it happen. We're sort of the first ones. We make the character, we sculpt the face, we like kind of model the body and the hair and the outfits, like all of that. But it's
Cool
also very
tattoos.
important to coordinate with graphic programmers and with animation department and with lighting. After all, I think
That's awesome.
there were a lot of back and forth with the lighting and like how the atmospheres work in game. For us, it was really hard to pull off like this very saturated and contrasted atmosphere, both from top down and then in the cinematic camera. So whenever you're like looking at something from top-down camera, it kind of like realistically, it looks quite desaturated. So like if you, I don't know, kind of gonna go out.
It'll be interesting to see if they have pure black areas because, you know, obviously there are characters with dark vision, and it would be cool to see that in a game, but I haven't seen anything about that yet.
You know, top floor of your building, look down, you might spot that the lighting is kind of flat. So we need to compensate for that in our game. So we need to make it a little bit more exciting. You know, the grass needs to be a little bit greener, the shadows needs to be a bit darker, and all of that. But with the same atmosphere settings, when you zoom in on the face, it kind of looks like too much. So we had to figure out a way where we would have like slightly different atmosphere settings, like.
Well, but your cinematics could be different. Well, I guess I don't know if they're cinematics. Your cinematics could be different than the environment. You just change. Well,
Top down.
Never mind. It's taking data from the actual game,
And
so
then
that won't
from
work.
the cinematic dialog camera.
Oh, interesting. Why do you love doing this? Because it's so much work and so much has gone into this game, and now it's finally launching. You have to love it. You have to be passionate about it. Why do you enjoy this so much?
I mean, it's really exciting to bring something to life, and in my
Because the community has wanted something useful from D&D for a long time, and we have not gotten it. We have gotten 400-page books that cost $60 each. So that's why we're very excited for Baldur's Gate, because it's like $60 game, get to play it forever, get to make as many characters as we want, get to invite friends to play it with us. Like, what's not to love about
my
it?
case, literally someone to life, you know? And you can see the process. Like, if you look back at what we had, like, at the beginning of our early access, and I personally look back even before that, you know, at our first, like, proof of concept shots, it was much more similar to DOS 2 kind of quality. And then we try to push it, and we try to really, like, embrace and achieve like this next generation kind of realistic, really flavorful look of the characters. And the process and like the kind of the destination was really fun. We had lots of ups and downs, you know, we had lots of things that like were breaking constantly, you know. We had to fix it, we had to like make more stuff, make new things, but at the end, when you kind of look back at the journey and then you look back at the results, you look at all of the characters that we've made, it's so rewarding. It's like, yeah, I can't even tell you how happy I am, you know, to see the characters online and to see people like being excited about, you know, playing with them and like romancing them and, you know, creating their own little stories.
Okay, we get it. We can have sex in this game, but you do not have to make that the main focus of the advertisements.
The characters that we have.
Which
Were
they
there any
aren't, but I'm
challenges
just
into creating all these different creatures, and also kind of delving into, you know, the world of Dungeons and Dragons and all the different like species that exist and all the different monsters. What was interesting about that challenge?
Yeah, so I mean, first thing that we did, we kind of like got all of the books at the Roth, and
I'm sure Wizards of the Coast was happy about that. They've freaking $5,000 off of this.
actually a few copies, and then we went through all of them. We were like reading up on creatures. Every time that we needed to make a creature or monster, we would check like, okay, how many tentacles does Beholder have? How many tentacles does Spectator has? You know? Yeah, there were a lot of research that we put in to make sure that we are staying true to the lore, and at the same time we were looking at like the visual and trying to bring it to the next level. We kind of got.
Okay, I have to say, who watches a cinematic with the mouse in the front of the screen? Have to ask.
inspired by like everything that D&D has to offer, and then we kind of like turned it into what you're gonna see in the game, you know. So like, yeah, very exciting monsters. We created some of the monsters that didn't previously like exist in the books, so maybe they gonna, you know, make it there, hopefully.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, there are armor sets, there are clothes. Like, sometimes you see references in D&D art, but you've added so much more based off of that initial art direction. What do you enjoy about creating those armor sets?
For the clothing and armors, we tried to show the class of the characters through the armor a little bit. At the same time, we tried to kind of fit those outfits on all of the races and also represent your racial identity with it. So we had our armors. We have now vanity clothing as well that you can wear. Both are intertwined, and like you can be whoever you want to be. You can be a halfling, a gnome, a dragonborn, and then like you can play as a bard or wizard or sorcerer, and then in the game would kind of like give you like you would find loot and vanity items in the game that can further kind of like embrace this role-playing element and like really show your character.
So much what you do is about like attachment. Like, you are making the NPCs feel real, to have an emotional connection. What has been important about and fun about creating these NPCs and making them characters that you care about? And then also the monsters on top of that. Like, they're, you know, sometimes they have to be monstrous, but you have to add a human element as well. We talked previously, and you mentioned lips are very important if the monster does have lips. So what goes into creating those NPCs, those monsters?
Yeah, we paid special attention to our animations and specifically lip sync, because in the game you can talk to anyone and any creature as well. So you can talk to squirrels, you can talk to cats, dogs. So one of the things that we had to deal with is how do we have animations, like how do we lip sync the creatures that don't have lips necessarily, like dragonborns actually, because dragonborns are dragon lizards. So it was really hard not to just make the open and clothing mouse animation like all. So we had to kind of like force a little bit of a lip animations in there, and we tried to kind of put in as much emotions as possible. So usually it's lips and eyebrows, even if you know, those creatures in real life, they don't necessarily gonna like have expressions with their lips and eyebrows. But yeah, we tried to put it in because actually then you can feel like if they're like happy, if they're smiling, if they're angry. So it needs to show like without actually like understanding what they're saying.
Do you have thoughts? I know this is a bigger question, but like the attachment of choice, because you are the very beginning of making choices in the game. What is it about choice that makes us so connected? I guess we're just defining and honing. Like, what you do is, to me, very much inviting the player to have input into the experience. And then there's dialogue after that. Then there's choices of where you go. But you're the very beginning of this.
Well, what we try to do is kind of sit back and check if we kind of give or can give the option to more people, to anyone really, because a lot of times when you're making something, you kind of can find yourself creating it for yourself, you know, like making what you like, kind of projecting your personal tastes on your work. But as a
Whoa, that looks like Marisha Ray from Critical Role.
lead, I kind of try to step away from it a little bit and really ask for opinion, you know, ask for opinion within my team and outside of my team, and listen to what people have to say. Because
weird.
A lot of times
you just
might not necessarily think about something. You know, we have a couple of channels with like where people can share feedback and requests sometimes, and sometimes I see some people saying like, oh hey, like it would be cool if we had that, or like if this character was looking like this, and we pay attention to that, because a lot of times it's just actually it's a really good idea, nobody had thought about it, you know, nobody
so
kind of
good.
paid enough attention to like
This company is amazing.
the NPC that like that's actually like their character, that's their story, you know. And we do that a lot. So a lot of times we're like, okay, this option is kind of funny, it might not be like, you know, the most pretty or the most, I don't know, beautiful option out there, But there's gonna be somebody that would really like it, and we're like, okay, if we see that in our options in character creation, we just like add it in,
Is there anything within the game that happens without spoiling anything that can also affect how your character looks like, other than armor types? I know at the character creation stage, if you choose a draconic bloodline, the scales will be influenced on your character, and even if you're a dragonborn, there will be a melding of different scales on top of that. Can we expect any alterations afterwards?
Yeah, there's going to be some instances, some small quests that could affect how your character looks. Sometimes it is temporary. So like, your like character can get affected temporarily, and sometimes permanently. So there are certain things that you can screw up in the dialogue, and then you're gonna have a permanent altered look of your character. It's not gonna be like, game breaking,
right?
I hope, but you can always save load.
But that's exciting to see that your character is influenced by that world as you progress. Okay, but my final question is just is there one thing you are the most proud of that you just absolutely nailed, or something that was just something you were chasing and trying to get right? And right before launch, congratulations, by the way. This has to be an immense feeling, or maybe you're just relieved. You're finally shipping it.
I mean, there are a lot of things that that did exactly that. Like, it's origin characters who had like a lot of back and forth, a lot of work put into them. Dragonborn race. Oh god, that's like, the most technically complicated race that we ever made. Very proud of it. I think we did a good job, and like animation and technical art, like everything. And maybe the last and final thing is the genitals. We spent so much time trying to hide them. Would you believe that they always like popped up in the most weird places? Shall I say? Yeah.
Perfect.
So that would be my top.
There's no way to end the video with that. There is no way.
3.
That is the perfect note to end on. Congratulations so much on the launch of the game. I cannot wait to see how everyone reacts.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Good. Or not the genitals. Okay. Well, so we are going to take a quick break. Obviously, YouTube is going to... Well, I'm recording this, so I don't know why I'm talking like I'm streaming. But we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back to watch the guide to all the classes. Bye. Alright, we're back. I don't know if I'm going to watch all of this, because it's explaining all of the classes and like subclasses and things like that, and it's 32 minutes, and I'm hoping it's not just doing like the Dungeons and Dragons explanation of it, but we're gonna see. So without a further ado, let's get straight into it.
My name is Nick Pechenyan. I'm lead systems designer. The team of systems designers works on the RPG core rule set. So that means all of the math, all of the roles, all of the bonuses, stats, attributes, etc.
What is your best D&D advice and best Baldur's Gate 3 advice, which they're virtually the same thing in terms of each of the classes? And what's your favorite thing about some of the subclasses included? Let's delve into Barbarian.
Oh, for Barbarian, the advice is very simple. It's don't hold back, right? Rage turn 1, rush into the center of a battle. You're probably going to survive it. It's probably going to be epic. If not, it's still going to be epic. Something to tell people about. If you like chaos, we have Wild Magic Barbarian subclass for you. So this is like chaos squared. Barbarians are already really good at just like rushing into the middle of everything. And throwing all caution to the wind. And then now, if you're Wild Magic Barbarian, you raging can also trigger these magical surges that will create new opportunities or threats.
There is, and this is one example, you created Wildheart, which is a subclass that you designed specifically for the game.
Wildheart is very much based on a book subclass, but we did some tweaks that made sense for this campaign. We wanted to make sure that Barbarian, who is attaining these beasts' spirit powers, that they had still flexibility. So we know that the campaign is huge, and maybe you really like wolves, and then 20 hours later you don't like wolves anymore. Now you like monkeys. As a barbarian, it's absolutely normal to change your mind. Nobody expects you to stick with just one wild heart, one beast spirit. So we really wanted for players to experiment.
And the Berserker subclass under Barbarian is also the very kind of quintessential Barbarian. It's the most barbarian, right?
Yeah. Berserker goes for.
This is just.
we've seen it. It's a really good class to try to solo the game. I've seen playtesters attempt that. It's incredible to watch. At your own discretion, though. Not advised on your first playthrough, but it's something that I've seen people attempt.
So let's delve into the fighter. This is it's a martial class. It's kind of the expert with weapons.
Well, fighters are surprisingly versatile. So it sounds like, hey, fighter is probably gonna just smack some people, but because the subclasses of fighter have pretty interesting customization. Battle Master has these maneuvers that give them very wide range of options of what to do with enemies. They can goad an enemy and make them attack you. You can fear an enemy. Battle Master has that. Eldritch Knight doubles in spell casting. Champion doesn't have either, but Champion is a really great subclass if you are just new to D&D and you want to just jump into it without too much reading. It's probably the perfect subclass to just click Champion, Fighter, and then click Start Game, and you're gonna figure out how everything will go. You're gonna crit a lot. You're gonna see big numbers on the screen, and then when you're gonna be ready for more customization, that's when a lot of the magic items that we put in the game are gonna start coming in. And then fighters, because they can wear any armor and they can use any weapon with proficiency, they are the most flexible of the martial classes. You can mix and match any features and passives and interesting magic.
Damn, what a great, what a great demonstration of the fighter.
It's the easiest thing to just put a bunch of loot in one big box and look at it and go like, okay, what can I build from this? How can I make it more than the sum of its parts?
That brings us to the rogue. I like rogues quite a bit. What is your advice in terms of if you're playing?
Well, actually, I'll take that back. Rogues, they're good for a subclass, but by themselves, their level ups are kind of shit.
D&D or Baldur's Gate 3, we've got Arcane Trickster, we've got the Assassin, we've got the Thief.
Rogue is kind of a staple in a D&D party. I would say that your party probably needs a rogue, or somebody who is going to be very much like rogue. So rogues are great at skill checks, and there's a lot of skill checks. There is quite a bit of crime.
But their level ups are
if you
shit.
fancy that. There's a lot of stuff to steal, a lot of pockets to pick, a lot of locks to pick, a lot of traps to disarm. It's really handy to have a rogue with some tools on hand, and rogues are really good at stealth. You can sneak around in Baldur's Gate 3, kind of dodge enemy side cones, weave in and out of stealth, even in combat. So that's something that we offer to the players, is to use hide action in combat. It's going to be a little bit challenging. You'll have to really hide first, and then enemies will still know that, hey, there was somebody who is trying to hide there. I need to go and check out that corner. But with some careful positioning, with some maybe teleportation tricks if you have any, you'll be able to hide in combat and then jump on the enemy again, which is really great for Assassin, which is the new subclass for release. And that's a subclass that is all about jumping on an enemy, having that first attack, surprising the enemy. It's very fun. It's like playing a cat, basically. You're in ambush all the time, and then you jump on people.
Do a whole bunch of damage very quickly. Arcane Trickster is very handy. The Mage Hand, being able to manipulate items from a distance. Yes.
It took us a surprising amount of work, but we finally.
The sadness in the despair in his voice when he said that. Oh.
We are going to allow Mage Hand at release to press buttons, push levers, and do little interactions.
Oh, because Mage Hand.
The reason why it took us so much work is that a lot of buttons and a lot of levers start dialogues or activate traps or start situations. So we had to
I
basically go
see.
through all of them and say like, okay, but what if the person touching the button is not a player, but is actually their mage hand? What happens?
These classes, these subclasses, kind of invite
Damn.
things that you need to do within the game to make those satisfying, including, like you just mentioned, with the
The
Arcane
choice
Trickster,
trees will be
being able to like click those levers, be able to
horrendous.
maybe pick a pocket from a distance, that kind of thing, interact with the environment. With Bard, you can play songs. Like, you suddenly have to realize the music. Where
I swear to God, if bards are copyrighted, like in their music that they play, it's gonna ruin it.
we may
I
not
doubt there
actually
is.
sing around the table when we're playing Dungeons and Dragons or play an actual lute. You had
We
to
do.
include instruments.
We do 6.5 men bearing the lifeguards. We haven't sung in our first campaign, but we might in the second season. I'm not gonna spoil much, but you should go check it out.
And lute, and actual songs that can be played, right?
Yes, absolutely. That was another kind of crazy feature that is a minor miracle that it was all created. I'm still really impressed every time it happens. But basically in Baldur's Gate 3, you have multiple musical instruments that you can pick, like flute, violin, lyre. And if you're a bard, or if you're somebody who has the performer feat, so we wanted to make other players be able to do this as well, but bards just do it for free, obviously, they're really good at it. You can play the instrument, and you can pick the song you're trying to play, and what you're gonna hear is just gonna be just your instrument going through the melody. But then if you have a second bard in your party, or somebody who's good with another musical instrument, you can play together, and you're gonna hear both instruments together. If you don't have an instrument handy, which is possible,
That's awesome.
you're kind of abandoned in the wilderness, your character will actually whistle. So bards can also whistle even without any musical instrument. They can make some music.
Yo!
And if you find a bard character in the world, an NPC, they might actually join you. And there's a very prominent bard character, Alfira, who's very, very popular with our community. And we really wanted to make sure that she can join in
she's
your
cool.
song and make you feel like she cares about your music. That's kind of one of the bardic special things, to connect over something that is not about dealing damage, not about persuading people, but just music.
And what is your advice for playing a bard?
For Bard, get into crazy situations by talking. So in Baldur's Gate 3, you can talk your way out of a lot of situations. And at release, we're also making sure that if you talk...
I wonder if there's different vocals, obviously for like the different genders, but I wonder like...
Talk
can
your
you
way
choose
out
from
of a big fight, you will be compensated in experience points, so that you're not under-leveled, not underpowered, just because you're refusing to murder everything. There's a couple of fights that you will have a very hard time dodging, or you will, let's say, it's going to be very morally questionable to dodge them, without spoiling anything. But bards are really good at talking their way out of situations. And the new
So are sorcerers.
subclass of bard we're going to add it at release is called the College of Swords bard. So these fellas, they are really good at dancing with their weapons, essentially. So their performance art is, involves a killing instrument. And it was a very interesting challenge for our animation team to take a look at all of the weapons that we support, which is a big list.
Dance fighting.
And figure out like, okay, what do we do with a polearm? How do we make it into a dance? How do we make this attack feel fluid? Like a
Somebody come get her.
And then we've got the lore, we've got Valor. Lore bard is very much like, you have all those old stories, you have all this old information, and then Valor is kind of like the Skald, like the battle bard that goes into combat and kind of like hypes everyone up.
That's awesome.
Yeah, literally. With their combat inspiration, they can make their allies a lot stronger in combat.
So we've got the Warlock, and Warlocks are always fascinating to me, and it's very well captured in Baldur's Gate 3. The different types of spells can be very specific when you look at Eldritch Blast, but you also have a patron, you have a boss, you have someone that you owe something to, and that has role-playing effects as well. We've got the Archfey, we've got the Fiend, we've got the Grey Old One. What is some of your advice for playing Warlock, just both from like a mechanical way and also
trying to survive
in the narrative?
A warlock is a great starter class for somebody who wants to play a caster but doesn't want to have to read their entire spellbook every time they fight. So warlock
Yep.
really constrains your choices but gives you a lot of power. They have very few but very hard-kicking spells. We try to make sure that those spells feel and sound great. You mentioned Eldritch Blast already. There was a lot of work that was put into making sure that you can cast Eldritch Blast
is
100 times
insane.
over your big playthrough, and hopefully it's still gonna feel as juicy and satisfying as your first time. For warlocks, the choice of patron is indeed very important. Something like the
Patron.
Archfey patron that we're adding at release is going to be the archetype of the charming devil, or charming archfey maybe. Somebody who's very good at charming people, dominating people eventually, is really good at enchantment magic. So that's kind of where their strengths lie. One of our origins is a patron, and you're gonna see their a warlock, and you're gonna see their patron a lot. Whether you will like that patron or you might fight with them, I don't know. But
that's cool.
some of my most favorite dialogues are actually this warlock will interacting with their patron. It's a lot of snark and a lot of humor.
And then you've got the Grey Old One as well. Were there any other interesting things about the mechanics for the Grey Old One or the Fiend?
The Great Old One is really more of an eldritch monstrosity kind of stuff. There's necrotic damage, cold damage, tentacles rising from the ground to grasp your enemies. It's pretty horrorish actually. Very interesting. And then the Fiend is the third subclass for the Warlock, the third patron. That one is predictably all about the hot.
I want to play the Warlock, but they're so limited in the amount of spells that they can have. They only have 2 spell slots of actual spells, whereas the Wizard has like 15. So it would take some research for me to like a Warlock.
Fires of hell.
So we got the Cleric, and this is when we get a lot of subclasses, because in D&D there are a lot of subclasses for Cleric. We've got Knowledge, Life, Light, we've got Nature, Tempest, Trickery, War. We don't need to get into all these subclasses, but what is some of your advice specific to Clerics, and also what's surprising about Clerics in D&D?
A really cool thing about clerics that is unique to them in Baldur's Gate 3 is that they can pick a deity that they're following, and whether their deity is evil deity or a good deity is gonna be coming up a lot in dialogues. So as a cleric, your dialogue choices are gonna be influenced by your deity primarily. This is kind of something special from their class. It's really satisfying to have a really evil playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3 if you're a cleric of a really evil god. You have a lot of interesting things that you can say to people. On the mechanical side, the clerics are probably neck and neck with wizards in terms of how varied and how flexible they are as casters. They have a lot of spells that they can do. Of course, they focus on healing and buffing their allies, but they're packing a serious punch as well. So you're not gonna have any issues with damage if your party has a cleric. They have a lot of radiant spells, which is great because you're gonna be seeing a lot of undead who are vulnerable to radiant damage. So you're gonna be really happy you have a cleric on your team. And then in terms of the subclass, clerics can really dabble into anything they want. So there's a really dedicated healer kind of archetype, which is life cleric. There's dedicated I'm gonna smash some people archetype, which is the war cleric. Clerics are really great if you want to combine a bit of armor, a bit of martial capability with very strong spellcasting side.
That brings us to the Druid. The Druid is very interesting because they have wild shape, and you cover the different subclasses like Moon, Land, and then Spores, which thematically is very dark and kind of creepy and of the moment. What is your best advice mechanically for playing a Druid in Baldur's Gate 3 and D&D? And also, what was most surprising about what came out of these subclasses?
Druid was our first big class that we put out in the patch after the early access launch of Baldur's Gate 3. So we were trying very hard to make a good impression. That means we put a lot of effort into what your wild shapes can do, even in terms of just like sitting on benches and lying down, but also making sure that every wild shape has interesting actions that they can use. For release, we're also trying to make sure that your wild shape catches up in power with something like a barbarian who is decked out with legendary weapon and like incredible loot that you can find in the game. So we really try to make sure that wild shapes don't drop off in power anymore into the end game, that you can use all of them as much as you want. And that makes the toolkit of the druid kind of very diverse as well. You can turn into a raven, you can fly to another part of the battlefield, you can turn into a bear,
That's
roar
awesome.
at enemies, make sure that they attack you and not your teammates. And if stuff is not going according to plan, you turn into a badger and you burrow your way out of your problem. There are some new shapes. I'm really happy that we found time to add the Dilophosaurus because I really wanted the dinosaur.
What? Dilophosaurus? What is that? Dilophosaurus. Oh, the spitters! Ah, right. Ah, I forgot about those. Nice. That's cool.
In this game. And then for the new subclass that we're adding at release, one look at Spore Druid, and I knew that we're gonna have to pick this one. It's just this wonderfully icky, slightly horrorish vibe to Druid, which is still very much in line with them being centered around nature and what is the natural cycle of things. It's kind of a reminder that besides growth, there's also decay in the cycle of nature, and all of it is still natural to a druid, and they can draw power both from growth, but also from very much actively decaying bodies that turn into zombies. As much as it sounds like necromancy, this is completely natural, kids.
No, that's perfect. I love their inclusion in this, and that the video looks fantastic.
Awesome.
When it comes to the ranger, what is your advice, mechanically and narratively in terms of playing Baldur's Gate 3 and D&D? Who is the ranger for?
Oh, ranger is there's a great debate inside me. If I'm gonna play ranger, I don't know if I'm gonna pick Beastmaster because I love their pets. For release, we're also making sure that the pet is growing in power with you, so that they're keeping up with what you can do, and they're also changing visually, and even their name is changing because we realize that the player across these tens of hours that you can be playing the game, the player has a lot of opportunities to customize how they look.
Let's see. People have been playtesting it, so 23 to 34 hours with the completionists being 70 and a half. So actually not that long. It's not as long as I thought it was gonna be. Okay. Interesting.
What they're wearing,
Not very long.
What paint they put on their equipment, what their weapons are, but the pet kind of always was staying the same. So we really wanted the pet to also change, so that you feel that, okay, my overall power is.
Just so you know, like, Tears of the Kingdom was averaging 100 to 200 hours for people to finish, and I finished in 84 hours.
Crazy. So that one is just my favorite, just because I like their pets. But the new subclass that we're adding is the Goonstalker, which is really great if you want to sneak and shoot. And then the third subclass is Hunter, of course. Hunter is also very interesting.
Fighter is just shit.
I
mean, no offense to Baldur's Gate, I don't know what their fighter is like, but in D&D, I've heard that fighter is like the worst actual class to play. So that's just what I've heard.
D&D, I think, is that D&D allows rangers, or like this hunter archetype, to stand their ground in both melee and ranged. You can totally make a melee dexterity-based combatant out of a ranger, and hunter is a way to do this. They have features that allow them to both have a whirlwind that attacks all the enemies in melee, and then also shoot at enemies at range. So they can really combine these two hunts.
that brings us to the sorcerer. I'm very excited because I have been
I love
playing
sorcerer.
wild magic since 2nd edition, so having that wild magic table suddenly included in Baldur's Gate 3 and having that wild magic surge happen automatically is so fun. Tell me about the different origins we have for the sorcerers and your advice for playing each of them in the game and how it kind of influences, like some of these even influence your look while you're playing the game.
Oh yeah, indeed. So the one I think that most players are familiar with is the wild magic sorcerer. It's a sorcerer whose source of
A lot of people play wild magic
power
sorcerers.
is the chaos of the multiverse. They are going to create these magic surges when they cast, when or at will eventually. And the cool thing about that is that it's kind of a third side to any combat. If you see that combat is not going very well, you can always create a magic surge and see, like, here's a new element that came in. Hey, all of the spells will heal anybody that they hit. These kind of random magic surges, very
It's kind of bad if you're fighting.
that you can turn to your advantage. You can go like, oh look, now suddenly my sorcerer is the best healer in my party because a surge happened. Suddenly they're healing out everybody. Or hey, I'm gonna swap with a key enemy target because a surge happened and I can swap with anything on the screen right now. It's a really reactive playstyle, and with a big variety of spells that sorcerers can have, which covers, like, it's a big overlap with wizards. It covers a lot of spells in the game. They can have a lot of cool combos, honestly.
And they can manipulate the spells as well, right? You can, like,
Yes.
with the meta magic options.
With the meta magic, that's another unique thing about sorcerers. So they can duplicate a spell, or they can increase its
Yeah, the meta
range, or they
magic
can
is
increase its
awesome.
duration, or they can make a spell subtle, so not attract any attention. Which
I don't think subtle magic. I don't think that's what subtle magic does. Subtle magic is. Not actually look that up really quick. We'll just go here because I don't know if this is going to show up. It's not, of course. Subtle magic does something else. I need meta magic. Maybe I can just look that up. I thought subtle magic made it so that you don't have to use certain things. Let's see, for the sorcerer. Where's the meta magic? Meta magic. It doesn't. There we go. When you cast a spell, you can spend one sorcery point to cast it without any semantic or verbal components. Yeah, so the semantic part, I think, is... like using hand movements, I think, if I remember correctly, but... Yeah,
it's
just
really
so you
powerful if you have knock spell available somewhere. That is wild magic. We also have Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer, which is proudly presenting their Draconic ancestor with scales that you can see and you can customize in the character creation. If you're a Dragonborn Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer, you have access to this, like, completely unique dual.
It'll be interesting to see how that works with other things, because obviously I'm going to be making my Tiefling Sorcerer. And so it'll be interesting to see how that works with the Draconic
Dragonborn
stuff.
skin that was just made specifically for this combination because we wanted to make sure that we cover it with something unique. And then they're gonna kind of tap into this Draconic ancestry and get powers from their ancestral dragons that depend on the color or the metallic sheen of the Draconic bloodline. So let's say if your grandpa was a red dragon, you might have fire-related powers and resistances.
And that doesn't mean that like you're stuck to those. So the Dragonborn or not Dragonborn, sorry, the Draconic Ancestry Sorcerer, you get to do spells. Your main spells are going to be focused on that Dragon Ancestry. Now you don't have to choose those spells, but those are going to be later in your level ups. Those are going to get more powerful. So at level, I don't remember. I think it was like level 5. I think at level 5, the Draconic Ancestry starts to help. So if you're a fire dragon and you cast Fireball, you get to add like a +4 to 1 damage that you roll. And so a 34 will turn into a 38 for fire damage. So it becomes really strong. And yeah, it's really useful.
And the new sorcerer class is Storm Sorcery. So if you know X-Men, there is Storm in X-Men, that's Storm Sorcerer for sure. The really neat thing.
That's weird that they've said 2 things relating to X-Men. They seem to really like to take, not take ideas, but take inspiration from X-Men when they're doing their effects and stuff.
That they can do, and they can do this from level 1, is they can fly right after casting a spell. So if you see a chest,
that would have been so helpful in my campaign. The one thing that for any campaign, for any character, having some way of flying is very necessary. Like, in most campaigns, fly will be
somewhere
useful.
on a cliff that you can't normally jump to, or you spotted a ledge that you can jump to and maybe there's a hidden door there. Storm Sorcery is really great in that. In like this exploration aspect, this like short little fly that you can do opens a lot of doors.
So that brings us to the monk. We've got a variety of subclasses. We have open hand, we've got shadow, we've got 4 elements. What is your advice for D&D players and Baldur's Gate 3 players? Who is the monk most geared towards? How to have fun with that mechanically and even narratively?
Monk is great if you want to be running around the battlefield, if you want to be striking where nobody is expecting you. Also, if you want to be able to really calm down a situation. So the interesting thing with monks, any class has special dialogue options when they're conversing with other NPCs. And for monk, the dialogue options really center on the concept of Zen, the concept of meditation. Monks are great at disarming the hostile NPCs with just a few words, at like lowering the temperature of hostility in the room. So that's when you really need a monk. And mechanically, monks are, of course, mostly about their unarmed attacks. They're masters of their own body. You're going to look great as you're unarmed attacking. Our animation team has been working with martial artists to mock up actual kung fu stances and moves. You might actually recognize some of them from popular movies that you've seen if you're into kung fu movies. Open hand monk is the subclass that is most focused on just the variety of different attacks that you can do without any weapons. You can stun people, you can tap into the key energy in their bodies to explode them later, and to make sure that they can also go head to head with the proverbial barbarian with a really big axe. We made sure that monks will find magic equipment that is going to synergize well with their unarmed attacks, and also with dashing, with jumping, with doing things that you...
I wish that, I mean, I understand it, but I wish that they would have the other 3 characters be computer generated. I understand that's cool to have all these characters, but it's going to get really confusing on who has what.
So there's going to be magic gloves that are going to empower you on unarmed attacks to make sure that you're still up there in utility in a fight.
Yeah, so tell me about the Way of Shadow, because these are very
Way
tricky,
of Shadow is
very good
amazing.
at bamfing around combat.
Way of Shadow is basically a ninja. It's a ninja on steroids. The really cool thing they can do, they can teleport from shadow to shadow. which is pretty unique and pretty powerful because you know, in a city there's shadows everywhere. Next to every building, next to every lamppost, there's a bit of shadow. So as a shadow monk, you can just jump from one place to another. Let's say if you need to stage a heist into a bank, that place is going to be full of shadows.
Yeah.
So take it as you will. And then final subclass is the 4 elements monk. This is if you've seen the Avatar animated series,
shit.
you're gonna be very familiar. Like that's the mental picture of
Sick.
how 4 elements monk work. They create this Hadouken spells, harnessing elemental powers. We also tweaked the key economy a little bit at higher levels to make sure that you never run out of juice as a monk. As long as you're resting properly, as long as you're not pushing too many fights without resting, you should have access to most of your kit in most of the situations.
That brings us to Paladin. This is a much beloved class and subclasses that's in D&D and Baldur's Gate 3. We've got the Ancients, we've got Devotion, we've got Vengeance, and Oathbreaker, which is a narrative-based subclass. Tell me all about, like, what's your advice for playing a Paladin? What's exciting about all these subclasses and what you've done narratively?
The Paladin is all about their oath, the oath that they swear. The Oath of Devotion is going to be the oath to protect the innocent, and well, there's going to be a lot of innocents. Let's put it this way. It's the quintessential knight in shining armor. It's the person who wants to hug their entire group and cover them in aura and probably will heal them at it. The Vengeance Paladin is the new subclass that we're putting into the release. That one is hell-bent on vengeance. They're pretty angry. And actually, very interestingly, as a paladin, you can break your oath. You need to be very careful about what you say and what you do, because your oath is very much for real. We are keeping track of things. And for Vengeance Paladin, the way to break your oath is to let the evil go unpunished. So in a lot of situations, it might feel like, hey, I'm just not gonna you know, say anything in the situation. It might be dangerous for me to speak out right now. But for a paladin, that's going to be breaking their oath. They're out there to make sure that there is restorative justice that's going to happen. And finally, there's Ancients. The Oath of Ancients is all about protecting nature. Paladins of that oath are a little closer to druids, and they understand nature and understand the desire to protect it from meddling, from pollution very strongly, which is great because we have a huge storyline about druids in Act 1 and then a huge storyline about nature being cursed and destroyed and polluted in Act 2. So there's a lot of kind of juicy narrative content to get into as an Oath of Vengeance Paladin. If your oath gets broken, you will become the Oathbreaker Paladin. It's gonna be the most subversive of all of these, of all 4 of these. It's gonna be probably the preferred choice for somebody who wants to really lean into an evil playthrough. And an interesting thing about Oathbreaker is that we also have a feature that allows you to reset your character and restart their class, because we wanted you to continue your playthrough no matter what. We know that there's a lot of big choices that you need to make at early levels in D&D. And we know that a lot of players will kind of jump in blindly and just try things out. And so if things don't work out, there's a very powerful being that you can talk to that is going to help you to reset your class and reallocate all of the levels. But then we realized, like, hey, are we just gonna allow players to like respec out of being an Oathbreaker? Which, of course, we can't possibly do. So you have to atone for your sins before you can respec. That's the only subclass that cannot just go and change their mind, like restart. They will have to do some work towards that.
Last but not least, we have the Wizard. We've got a lot of subclasses here. We've got Abjuration, Conjuration, Divination, Enchantment, Evocation, Necromancy, Illusion, and Transmutation. So we don't have to go into every single subclass, but tell me what was challenging about creating the Wizard? What's your advice for playing Wizard in Baldur's Gate 3 and D&D?
Wizards have access to most of the spells in the game, except the tiny exception of Bard, who can just steal spells, but doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But anyway, on paper, wizards are the most versatile of casters. You'll probably have the biggest hotbar full of spells. You will be able to pick up scrolls in loot and buy them from vendors and learn them, kind of memorize them, and be able to cast these spells forever. Since wizards are so in tune with magic, with how magic works, their subclasses are actually each corresponds to a school of magic. My favorite one, and one that I enjoy the most, is divination, which was quite challenging to create technically for us. But the way we are adapting divination is that when you rest, you have a bit of a omen, a premonition, which allows you to roll 2d20s and save the results for later. And maybe one of those d20s is going to be a high roll, maybe one of them is going to be a low roll. You will be able to replace rolls going forward with these dice. So you, if you're in a tight situation in combat and you really need a crit, but hey, you predicted that somebody is going to roll a d20, you're going to put that portent d20 dice and say like, now I'm gonna crit. I foresaw this. I had a dream about this. Or if you really need an enemy to miss you, you can always go like, hey, you just rolled a 2 because I foresaw this when I was sleeping last time.
Divination is probably one of my favorite wizards as well. I'm very in evocation. I have to bring up just because my wife Megan loves evocation wizards and just blasting enemies to cinders. It's definitely the most blasty of all the wizards, the most glass cannon. How do you handle illusion magic and illusionists and necromancy as wizards?
Necromancy is fun because we wanted the player to have a little necromantic army. That's kind of the stereotype is having a lot of police that are less than fully alive. So the necromancy wizard will be able to raise additional undead, and their undead are going to be a bit beefier as well. This paired with some high-level necromancy spells will allow you to have quite a few necromantic minions and also different kinds of mummies, ghouls, zombies. There's also some very rare magic tomes that are going to allow you to summon even more undead characters in the city. So check it out. Try to make the zombie apocalypse happen. I've seen some stuff.
And for like illusion magic, like how does that work in Baldur's Gate 3?
The illusions are tough, and we leaned into our crime system with illusions. The illusion is something that you can use to distract guards. Illusion magic is really great if you're not trying to get into trouble right now. If you're trying to sneak around, maybe you're going to be a sneaky wizard. So this is great when you can create minor illusions faster than any other class, and kind of manipulate guard behavior, manipulate NPCs. In a city, it's really useful to be able to tell to make a big crowd look away. That comes in very handy.
Interesting. Alright. Well, that was all of the videos that are out for Baldur's Gate as of right now. I will obviously make more if more come out. But I want to thank you all so much for watching. And I'll see you in the next one.